Beacon Press Audio presents The Stars in Our Pockets, Getting Lost and Sometimes Found in the Digital Age, by Howard Axelrod. This audiobook is narrated by Tom Taylorson. Published by Beacon Press Audio, 2020. Introduction. Inner Climate Change. A few years after college graduation, I moved into a house at the dead end of an unmaintained dirt road, deep in the woods of Vermont's northeast kingdom. I had no TV, no cell phone, and no computer. The newspapers piled by the wood stove told of lost dogs, bingo nights, and spaghetti dinners already years gone. And by that first December, I needed those cutest darn mutts less as ghostly company than as kindling, their tracks through the snow into newsprint finding purpose again as crumpled balls, then as glowing sea anemones flaring over the previous night's embers. Every 2 weeks or so, if the road wasn't snowed in, I'd make the drive down into the village of Barton to stock up on provisions. There I'd catch the dazzle of magazine covers by the produce aisle, the celebrity gossip like a strange, mute party that needed your attention to turn the sound back on. But usually I went days without hearing, speaking, or seeing a word, other than the wisdom on my tea bag. Variety is the spice of life, and the ingredient list on the back of my soup. If your Luddite alarm is flashing an icon of a misanthrope brandishing a walking stick at technology's evils, I don't blame you. I did grow an absurd beard, and my cousin Mitch announced me at Thanksgiving as the Unabomber. But I wasn't a misanthrope, and my retreat to Vermont, which started in 1999, had nothing to do with technology. It had to do with a question I'd been asking myself since being blinded in my right eye 5 years earlier. A question that felt both elusive and ubiquitous. So much a part of my life I couldn't avoid it, but also couldn't grasp it. A question no ophthalmologist could offer any clues to. What shapes the way I see? Even that wasn't the right question. Not exactly. It had more to do with how the air felt around me as I walked up to class, or stepped down the 2 wide stairs into the dining hall, with how friends felt closer in space since the accident, but conversations felt farther away, with how time felt slower and more fluid, and with how there was some part of me, a deep, abiding part I didn't know very well, that felt exactly the same. Really, the question was about how the world entered me and how I entered the world. But I couldn't find the shape of the question, let alone its answer, while being surrounded by it. The accident happened on a beautiful May afternoon, 2 weeks before the end of my junior year at Harvard. During a game of pickup basketball, in a scuffle for a loose ball, a boy's finger darted into my eye past the knuckle. Time went slow motion. Space seemed to collapse, and his fingernail sheared my optic nerve, the cable that connects the back of the eyeball to the brain. Blinded in that eye, I lost peripheral vision, depth perception, and also a kind of firmness in the world, an unquestioning confidence in my sense of reality. After 10 days convalescing at home, I returned to school for final exams, but everything looked and felt different. I stumbled often on the stairs, knocked over glasses of grape juice in the dining hall, would turn to my right with a full tray and crash into someone who had materialized out of thin air. Perhaps strangest of all, walls no longer looked solid. I noticed it the afternoon I was studying for my Shakespeare exam. A chair scraped on the floor above me, and when I looked up, I couldn't tell where the brown molding ended and where my ceiling began. There was a kind of hovering, a margin of error, the ceiling unwilling to commit to a precise location. The wall behind my desk didn't look particularly solid either. Everything in the room had a subtle floating quality, as though I'd passed through a fairy tale portal into a dress rehearsal for reality, as though nothing was really happening in the material world. Instead of going to breakfast, I began to watch the morning from my bedroom window, the patterns of backpacks and jackets shifting like schools of fish. I began to wonder about blind spots, about the tides guiding my friends' daily motions, about the tacit assumptions we took to be natural laws, and I began to be afraid that every morning the world would look unfinished to me, every line the ghost of a line, as though what I was seeing had already happened somewhere else. So, not long after graduation, I moved to the woods of northern Vermont. My hope was that whatever shaped the way I saw would knit together again like so many broken bones. The house had no clocks, and I began to wake with the sun, to know the progress of the seasons by its angle in the sky. The woods around the house expanded. The nearest town drifted far away. On my daily snowshoe treks through the trees, I began to see and hear things I'd never seen or heard. The fibers of a maple tree constricting and keening in the cold. A camouflaged black-capped chickadee, its feathers tufting in the wind on a snowy branch. The days slowed. My attention opened, a windless pond taking in the trees on its banks. My memory opened, too. I could snowshoe my way back to the house through drifted snow and miles of unmarked trees, ignoring my tracks, simply remembering the crumbling stone walls and the landmarks of birches and spruce. As I unloaded groceries from the village market, the songs that had been playing on the overhead speakers would follow, offering a kind of souvenir map of my market experience. When I lifted a package of ramen from the shopping bag one afternoon, Elton John's Rocket Man unspooled after it like a thread through the aisles. I miss the earth so much. I miss my wife. I'd been reaching for the ramen at the end of aisle 3. It's lonely out in space. I'd rounded the potato chip display. And I think it's going to be a long, long time till touchdown brings me round again to find. I'd been reaching into the cooler for the orange juice, where I'd paused to listen. I'm not the man they think I am at home. Oh, no, no, no. Maybe this happened because of my long daily walks in the woods and my brain's new habit of absorbing everything it could as reference points. Maybe it happened because I didn't hear music anywhere outside the market, and Rocket Man is a weirdly memorable song. Either way, everything I encountered, or didn't encounter, was quietly altering my sense of time, my sense of place, and the quality of my attention and memory. What I was experiencing was changing how I was experiencing. Perhaps even stranger, there was no way to feel those changes being made. I could only register they had been made once my ramen became a kind of radio. There in the kitchen, among foods that were songs and songs that were really a map, it began to dawn on me that the truth about perspective is embedded in the word's etymology. It comes from the Latin perspicere, which doesn't mean to look from, but to look through. Perspective isn't a place outside you, a vantage point you can step away from and inspect from afar. It's a lens you can't see because it's a part of how you see. It's your inner eye, the complex lens through which you look through your physical eyes and see reality. And it keeps changing as a function of how you're living, adapting to your daily habits and needs, using everything it can to navigate the deep snows and miles of unmarked trees, even when you're just shopping in an 8-aisle village market, tapping your thumbs on the shopping cart to Elton John. In his memoir On the Move, the neurologist Oliver Sacks writes that the only modern theory to have excited him as much as Darwin's theory of evolution is Gerald Edelman's theory of neural Darwinism. Experts used to assume that the brain was fairly rigid, fully programmed at birth. But the cliff notes to contemporary understanding started in 1949 with a phrase known as Hebb's rule. Cells that fire together, wire together. In other words, your particular experiences, and especially your habits, shape the connectivity of your brain by determining which neurons repeatedly cause other neurons to light up. Those lighting up patterns form particular constellations of neurons among your neuronal population. This is where Edelman comes in. As Sacks explains in On the Move, Edelman conceived almost from the start of his career that process analogous to natural selection might be crucial for individual organisms, with life experiences serving to strengthen certain neuronal connections or constellations in the nervous system and to weaken or extinguish others. He saw his own work as the completion of Darwin's task, adding selection at a cellular level within the lifespan of a single individual to that of natural selection over many generations.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?